Hey gamers, it's November, and you know what that means. No, wrong year. It's not what I meant. Do people still do that? Yes! Happy Zelda month, everybody. Isn't it quite ironic that the 10th annual Zelda month is the same year that Skyward Sword HD released? You know, the game that started Zelda month. So as logical thought progression goes, I'm just gonna ignore that fact and instead talk about my favorite Zelda game because, you know, I said I was gonna do that last Zelda month, so... The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker is my favorite Zelda game of all time. I got it because of Chugga Conroy's Let's Play, surprise surprise, and it was one of the first GameCube games that I owned. Like, I owned it, not my brother. And even though I never beat the GameCube version because the disc got scratched to hell, don't worry, I'll beat the shit out of Past Me for you. I did beat the 2013 HD remaster for the Wii U, which is what I'll be using in today's game footage because, like, I don't have a way of recording the GameCube, and I don't feel like downloading it on Dolphin, and also the Wii U version is just kind of better. So without further ado, let's talk about the history of the game. Yep, I'm doing that again. Surprise, surprise.
And here's a little message for you, boys and girls. I may or may not be working on a Discord server for this YouTube channel, but last time I tried that, it didn't go out so well. So I'm just gonna say, I don't know, 30 likes? Yeah, 30 likes. If this video can get 30 likes, I'll release the link to the Discord server, and we can all have fun there. It'll come with perks and everything. And, yeah. And, don't worry, this is, like, no time limit, you know? Like, if this video gets 30 likes, no matter what, you know? And if I make a video after this one, just put 30 likes on that video. Does it make sense to you? Am I getting through to you guys? Can you hear? The year is 2000. The game The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask made for the N64 is about to finalize its development. Meanwhile, Nintendo is working on their new hardware, the Nintendo GameCube. They need to make a new Legend of Zelda for the GameCube. Early development followed the same art style of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, but with the new technological capabilities of the GameCube, which led to the clip showing Link vs. Ganondorf at Space World 2000, which got everybody excited. But then the team was just kind of worn out from this art style. Eiji Aonuma actually went on record saying he hated the demo, saying it was derivative of the past Zelda games. They were looking for a new art style to use. Then Yoshiki Haruhana made a cartoonish drawing of Link that caught the Zelda team's eye. This then led to the cartoonish cel-shaded art style seen in the final product, and the decision to make the overworld a vast ocean was based off of how cool it would look in the art style. Fun fact, you know how in dungeons, Link's eyes will look at where you should go or objects of interest? That stemmed from a joke of the developers saying that Link's eyes are so big that they could shoot lasers. Then they released the tech demo at 2001 Space World. Although you can't find people saying it in today's times, people hated this art style. Here's where I sound like a patronizing old man, even though I'm 16. When I was a young lad and I had this game, people said,
"It's kind of my girlfriend."
Her?
Anyway, it seems things on the development side of things were going good until their deadline was on the horizon. 2 entire dungeons, as well as story content on an island, were cut out of the game. Instead, we got the Triforce Hunt, which, trust me, we'll talk about that later. Anyway, 10 years after it was released in 2003, Nintendo released an HD remaster for the Wii U in an attempt to boost sales, because God knows they needed it. I'll talk about what the HD version changes as we go through the game, but first, this game looks great! This game's art style and graphics caused a huge controversy at the time, to the point where the Zelda team overcorrected on Twilight Princess's art style. Whether you like it or not, the game's art style didn't age anywhere near as well as Wind Waker's. And it's because Wind Waker aged so well that I believe that this is the best looking Zelda game, especially with the HD remaster, which puts everything in 1080p. But there's something else to mention that came along with the HD version's look. When Wind Waker HD came out, they decided to add a bloom effect to the overall looks of the game, which, by the way, is what the developers intended the original to look like, but people complained either way. Honestly, it doesn't look bad at all, and I like what it did to the game's color palette. I think it's way better than the original's color palette, which at times can be an ugly mesh of colors. When looking into fan reactions to Wind Waker HD's bloom, I think Reddit user 75th Trombone put it best. The actual problem is that the several aspects of lighting in Wind Waker HD do not mesh stylistically with the cel-shaded style of the original. There it is. That's the only time I'll praise a Reddit user. Okay, on to the actual game. So, our story begins with what the title is, a legend. It begins by retelling the story of Ocarina of Time, and after Link went off to find Navi, Ganon returned and wreaked havoc upon Hyrule, and everyone just kinda assumed Link would return to help them, but he didn't. So the three gods, Farour, Din, and Nehru, said,
Weather update. It's raining. Severe flooding alert, the entire world is now an ocean.
And flooded Hyrule. Now, all that remains are those who went to the mountaintops. Decades later, we now look at Outset Island. A young girl named Aryll is looking for her brother, and holy shit! For the first time, Link isn't wearing a tunic, and he has a family! This is the only game where we see that Link has a family. He has a sister and a grandmother. I would really like to see this concept expanded more, but apparently they just decided to let it go after this. And hey, today's Link's 10th birthday. He goes to his grandma and... hey, his grandmother's gift is the tradition of dressing up like the hero of time for your 10th birthday, because that's how old Ocarina Link was when he started his journey. We then go to Aryll, and she loans us her telescope for a day as her birthday gift. Thanks. And when we go to try out our new gift, we see this. Link decides to go and help her, but first, he needs to find a way to defend himself. So you go to an old man who's like the last remaining swordsman alive, which, by the way, that is literal, and you get your standard Zelda combat, aka if you're not planning on doing a spin attack or a jump attack, mash B. But wait! This is the first game to introduce the parry mechanic, which was more improved in Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild. Right before an enemy attacks, a big flashing A button will appear, and if you press it, you'll do one of two parry attacks. You only need them to fight Dark Nuts and also the final move on Ganondorf, but they paved way to the backslash and the Helm Splitter. Which, if you don't know, is a part of Twilight Princess's combat, which I have gone on record saying is the peak of Zelda combat, just like in general. Seriously, this game has great combat. So then we go to save the girl who was dropped in the woods, and we learn her name is Tetra. And then you realize you need a shield, so you go to grab it and... I can't believe a Zelda game is making me feel bittersweet. Within the first 20 minutes. Then everyone guilt trips Tetra into taking Link to where Errol is to save her. And... this game is actually hilarious. Please play this game. You then have to do the first dungeon without your sword and stealth around, which is interesting. I like it. And most people beat this segment in like 30 minutes, so it isn't even bad if you don't like this. We then try to save Errol and then get assassinated by Ganondorf's bird friend. How did he get Link into the boat? He's a boat. So we wake up and the boat is talking. Why is he talking? So this is your main companion for the game, and because he's a boat and can only be in the water, this means he's less intrusive. Actually, this is the least intrusive companion of any Zelda game, which is a double-sided sword, because you're not being handheld through the entire game, but at the same time, he's not helpful enough to new players. That being said, this game is pretty easy, so I wouldn't even worry about it too much. Anyway, this dude is called the King of Red Lions. He says Ganondorf kidnapped our sister and says you're gonna need some things to kick his ass, come with me. And after breaking out Tinkle from a prison, which what could only be for murder and extortion, we set sail and... yeah, the music in this game is good. You know it, I know it, we all know it. Every Zelda game's soundtrack slaps, but I'm pretty sure this was the first game to not use MIDI tracks, so... The Great Sea is a great song, and for how much sailing you do, I'm so excited that I never get tired of this song. Dragon Roost Island also slaps. And the last song I want to mention is the mid-boss theme. However, not listed in the game's actual soundtrack, we have Makar and Medley's performance, which I honestly adore, so I'm gonna play them for you real quick. back to the actual game, we reach our destination with the King of Red Lions and... wow, that's big. This game's world is a double-edged sword. It's really cool to have this game take place in a vast sea. There's no other Zelda game that's done this. And sailing at times can be fun, but there's just not much to do here. There are 49 islands / reefs / buildings on the map. However, they are so small compared to the water surrounding said island and even this little square of water to mark on the map. Honestly, if they made the water surrounding the islands, like, I don't know, 35% smaller, I just feel like that would be perfect and, you know, less infuriating. I know that's probably a lot less than what y'all were expecting, but I honestly think that would be the perfect amount. That being said, there is a fast travel in the game, but you unlock it halfway through, and I don't think there are enough fast travel points for you to go to. But the HD version offers the swift sail after the first dungeon, which is such a huge improvement compared to the original sailing due to the fact that you don't have to actively change the wind direction every time you turn. Back to the actual islands, most of the islands you find in this world map are quite tiny and only have one thing of value, whether it be a minigame or a puzzle or a combat challenge. There's even a huge island that has barely anything on it. What it was supposed to have was cut from the game. But because a lot of these one things of values on the islands are locked behind a dungeon item, you're better off just not exploring until the end game. So if you explore an island and unlock it on the map, you won't be confused about what you have and haven't completed, as well as spicing up the boredom of the Triforce hunt.
You'd think a game like The Wind Waker would go all out with map interaction. Stuff like marking where you've been, or what's on different map squares. That way you can track where Koroks are, for instance. You could also track where the Gorons are, or where unfinished islands are, or where you can find the ghost ship, or literally anything you want to track on this map. There's not even an option to place icons on each tile, which isn't an ideal solution, but one which would have worked wonders on the GameCube version to remember what each tile holds. You could color code tiles for different purposes that would fit your needs. The Wii U gamepad could have furthered this by letting you draw in stuff to remember wherever you explored, but there's absolutely none of that. The Incredible chart tracks which pieces of the Triforce you've collected. In addition, the Heart Piece charts don't track your progress in collecting them at all. By the time you collect these charts, you'll probably have already collected a fair amount of heart pieces and sea charts like I did, so these charts will be effectively useless at conveying the information you need. The sea platform and secret cave charts are just useless in general. If you've already traveled to an island, you'll likely already have explored the secret cave, and the sea platforms don't have anything useful to collect on the whole, except for a few sea platforms that do have interesting items on them, which seriously aggravates me.
There are 4 islands with towns on them, but one of them has barely anything after you complete the second dungeon. Windfall and Outset are great. They have a lot to offer, and Dragon Roost has the first dungeon and a lot of story beats as well as some fun stuff to do on the side. Speaking of Dragon Roost, let's get back to that. Dragon Roost Island is home to the Rito, which the Zora eventually evolve into. The fish people turn into birds. What? Anyway, there are great characters to meet here. The true American hero, the Mailman. Medley, Kamali, Valoo, sort of. I really like Kamali's little character arc of trying to not be a coward. Medley is great, kind, and a caring person. Other characters to mention are Makar, Nico, and the MVP, Tetra. Tetra gets a little controversial later on, but for now, she's great. She has the most personality, she plays off of Link perfectly, I absolutely adore her. Back to Dragon Roost, Valoo is a mighty dragon who allows the Rito to fly in a sort of rite of passage, and it's Prince Kamali's turn to do so. However, Valoo hasn't been himself lately, so you help Medley to see what's the root of the cause of problems in order to help Kamali. And also get the pearl he's holding because the King of Red Lions told us to. And this leads to Dragon Roost Cavern. Dragon Roost Cavern is the first of 5 dungeons. There would originally be 7 dungeons, but those got cut. And that is clear to tell from the difficulty progression of the dungeons, or lack thereof. Dragon Roost is easy, as the first dungeon should be, but then there's the second dungeon which is just as easy, if not more easy, as is the third and the fourth. The only dungeon that represents a challenge is the Wind Temple, which is filled with dangerous enemies, challenging puzzles, as well as being the only dungeon with a non-linear design. So the dungeon progression looks like this. As for the actual puzzles, these are possibly the easiest of the 3D Zelda games. This is actually helped by Link looking at places of interest. The most complicated puzzle in Dragon Roost is a sliding block puzzle, while in the Forbidden Woods it's just golf, and then there's the Tower of the Gods and the Earth Temple, which is just play the command melody and get the thing you're controlling to its destination. Even the Wind Temple puzzles have nothing on the early dungeon puzzles in Twilight Princess. That being said, the mid-bosses of the dungeons are quite amusing. I also love the warp pots in the dungeon. If you need to leave and come back, you can use a warp pot instead of backtracking through the places in the dungeon you've already been, seeing as the second and fifth dungeon are the only ones that require a lot of backtracking. And then there are the most important parts of the dungeons. The items. The items in this game really rock. Zelda games have a trend of having dungeon items that are only used for that dungeon and never again, but I just don't feel that way about the items in the Wind Waker. Except for the iron boots. Other than the iron boots, the only item I feel is underutilized at times is the Deku Leaf, which is something else that this game paved way for in future games. Seriously though, you use the Deku Leaf in Dungeon 2 and then forget about it until Dungeon 4, which in my playthrough was about a
7.5
5-hour gap. Compare that to every other item, and these are used quite frequently. I really love the grapple hook, especially now that it isn't stiff like it was in the GameCube version. I also love how the hook and bombs can be used in the King of Red Lions as a anchor thingy and a cannon. I also love how the long-ass hook animation in the boat has been cut down in the HD version. I also would like to shout out the Chad Skullhammer. Just fucking look at it! The boomerang is also busted as hell, as you can just stunlock enemies with it infinitely. Now, I can't talk items without the game's title item, the Wind Waker. The Wind Waker is your main instrument in this game. It's a conductor's baton that has a choir sing each note. It's pretty cool. The only complaint about it I have is that there's just too few songs. And there's only 2 that you'll use frequently. The Song of Passing, which turns it from day to night and vice versa, and the Ballad of the Gales, which teleports you around. But you unlock that halfway through the game. The first song you learn is the Wind's Requiem, which changes the wind direction, but that becomes obsolete after your first use of it, seeing as you can get the Swift Sail right after you learn it. The other 2 songs, while they're the best sounding, are only used to open specific doors within the Earth and Wind Temple. As for the HD changes to the items, the gamepad makes switching items a breeze, pun intended. I mean, look at this! Hell yeah. Anyway, let's use the grapple hook to make our way to the first dungeon boss, Goma. So the bosses in this game are honestly pretty average for 3D Zelda games. The bosses are more like puzzles, using your dungeon item that you exploit, then wail on the boss's obvious weak point, then repeat 3 times, so honestly nothing really new. But I do want to mention that the item used in combat here. There are now many enemies that also have weaknesses to exploit with an item, and if you don't know what that is, safe bet it's the Deku Leaf for Boomerang, in the early game at least. That being said, all of the bosses are pretty average, but there is one that I can't help but give a big stupid smile whenever I see. Mulgara. He's not even hard, but this fight is just so fucking cool. Twilight Princess used this boss as a base for more feel, and people seem to really like that fight. Anyway, after killing Goma and saving Dragon Roost, we get a pearl, and then we do the same song and dance, but with... Okay. And we go to find the third pearl and... oh. Now that's just sad. This game has cut a lot of content as mentioned before. This includes the events taking place on Great Fish Isle, which was supposed to be the next big island with an actual town and dungeon. And I predict these would be the home to the Gorons, seeing as we got 2 dungeons with the Koroks and with the Rito, and since there are Gorons in the game, but only as little Easter eggs, I think we were meant to get some Goron segments. That's just me though. But because of the cut content, there's no dungeon required to get the third pearl, and after the Wind Temple, we then get the Triforce Hunt. No, fuck you. Instead of another dungeon, we need to follow a chart to go to 9 different islands, each with a puzzle sequence, and then you get to find another chart. But this time, if you haven't been filling out the map or aren't looking at a guide, then you're fucked. Oh, but before you can actually read the cryptic chart, you have to go to Tingle and pay him 400 rupees per chart to decipher to then find a fucking Triforce shard. At least in the HD version, you only need to decipher 3 of the 9 Triforce charts. Some places where you'd find the charts are just straight up replaced with shards themselves, so it's slightly more bearable here. But I don't need to tell you how this process is just padding, and possibly the worst instance of it in gaming history. A better way to pad out your game is to just do what Final Fantasy VII does, and forces you to play a shit ton of minigames. The minigames in Wind Waker are pretty alright. The Squid Battleship minigame, although entertaining, gets dull real quickly due to how fucking random it is. Although I love this guy, he is the only reason I go to play this minigame. There's a Deku Leaf flying minigame, but you can't do it without the magic upgrade, and if you complete it once, then there's no real replay value to it. There's a boat race, but I don't really see a need to do more fucking sailing. There's a letter sorting game on Dragon Roost that I legit love. I don't know, something about it is just so addictive. If this were a mobile game, I'd download it. There's also the auction minigame, but I don't think it's that good because of how easy it is to exploit. Simply wait for the last 5 seconds and then bid 10% above whatever the current bid is, and you stun everybody and instantly win. It's a pretty cheap tactic if you just want to get the swift sale, though.
Then there's Orca's fucking minigame. Oh boy. When you have access to Outset Island once more, you can bring 20 Knight's Crest to Orca, the Sword Master, to learn a special spin attack. I was stupid and thought that instead I have to do the minigame where you have to hit him 500 fucking times before he hits you 3 times. But instead, all I got was a heart piece. Not even fucking worth it. Then there's something that is a game within itself, the game's trading quests. The side quests in this game are also pretty alright. I wouldn't say there's a lot of them, but the good ones pack a lot of punch. This big one is a trading quest that has you switching items with 3 Gorons in order to get the magic armor. The thing that sucks with this, however, is that along with trading items, you also have to pay a fee for a new item. This can total up to 500 rupee, which fucking sucks. That being said, it's not the worst thing considering how this game throws rupees at you. There's also a quest where you become a photographer's apprentice, which leads to being able to take pictures in color, and you can actually use this at the Nintendo Gallery to make models of literally everything.
Another side quest I like is with this old man here, or as Chugga Conroy called him.
Go away, old man pedophile.
In the beginning, he's a street beggar who will chase you and ask if you can save his daughter, who was also kidnapped. There's also this super rich man whose daughter was kidnapped as well, and when everyone is released from the fortress, their roles reverse, and old man pedophile is so arrogant that he doesn't even remember you. But then his daughter wants you to send a love letter she made for a moblin named Mo at the fortress, and then he writes back. And he talks about how he wants to eat her, and she's just so infatuated. It's really funny. There's also the rich man who now lives a life of simplicity, and his daughter was considering thievery, but if you catch her in the act, you can change her life and have her work an honest life. It gives a lot of closure to the Forsaken Fortress storyline. Speaking of, let's get to that. After we get all 3 pearls and almost have a close run-in with Tetra again, we then place 3 pearls where the King of Red Lion tells us to, and a huge tower rises. This is Dungeon 3, and once we complete it, a portal opens up and it takes us to the drowned kingdom of Hyrule. This is so awesome, seeing this epic battle frozen in time, and was this puzzle the only thing keeping Ganondorf from taking over Hyrule?
You were seriously keeping Ganondorf out with the slide puzzle.
Either way, we now have the Master Sword. And the King of Red Lion tells us that it's now time to save our sister, and we will, with Tetra's help. But first, it's fight time. We then go to challenge Ganondorf after fighting his oversized bird. Actually, this fight is pretty dope, and so is Phantom Ganon's. You can fight him with a bottle. We challenge Ganondorf with Tetra, and... Tetra awakens at Hyrule Castle and comes to the Chamber of the Master Sword, where we learn that the King of Red Lions is none other than King Daphnes no Hansen Hyrule, King of, well, Hyrule. He then drops a bigger bombshell that Tetra is indeed Princess Zelda, and people got angrily upset for no reason once more. People complain that all of Tetra's personality and character is drained out of her once she realizes she's Zelda. These people are blinded by another issue. Her personality isn't gone, it's just that she only has like 4 lines of dialogue after this, and 3 of those are related to the immediate plot, so there's no real room for her personality to shine. The other line is actually a nice moment where she apologizes for Link for just dragging him into this mess. Anyway, the king tells us that we need to fully power up the Master Sword via help from the Earth and Wind Sage, leading to my favorite part of the game where you get these 2 mini-dungeons based off of Fire and Ice, and then we go with Medley to the Earth Temple in this amazing scene. We also need Makar for the Wind Temple. After our Master Sword is fully powered up, we head back to Hyrule only to find... We now must traverse through Ganon's tower, which is basically a boss rush and a weird-ass bullshit maze. Also, what's with these weird-ass transitions when you kill these bosses? It's so weird. We get back to Zelda, and then... What the fuck is that? This is Puppet Ganon, and is actually terrifying as fuck, as well as this twist on the victory theme. After we defeat Puppet Ganon, we then make an epic climb up the second best boss arena in the game in order to make it to the best boss arena in the game. Now, for this next bit, I want you to keep in mind that this is indeed the same Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time, the same Ganondorf who was a cheater and a manipulator, who schemed his way to the Triforce to basically put Hyrule in a state of ruin. We see why he did what he did in Ocarina of Time. And he didn't want to rule the world purely for the sake of ruling the world. My country lay within a vast desert. When the sun rose into the sky, a burning wind punished my lands, searing the world, and when the moon climbed into the dark of night, a frigid gale pierced our homes. No matter when it came, the wind carried the same thing. Death. But the winds that blew across the green fields of Hyrule brought something other than suffering and ruin. I coveted that wind, I suppose. It could only be called fate, that here I would again gather the three with the crests. That I should lay my hand on that which grants the wishes of the beholder. That when power, wisdom, and courage come together, the gods would have no choice but to come down. The power of the gods. The Triforce. He who touches it will have whatever he desires granted. Already the crest of wisdom is mine. All that remains Do not fear. I will not kill you. I merely have need of the power that dwells within you. Now, let us put an end to what binds us together. Okay, first of all, this is the most character development we see out of Ganondorf throughout the entire series, alright? Second, we finally see his motivation. Envy. He was jealous of how prosperous Hyrule was compared to Gerudo. Now, he certainly doesn't want to make life better for his people like everyone says, because, simply put, there is no mention of that. He's only speaking for himself here. I feel bad for the guy. I certainly wouldn't forgive him for his actions in Ocarina of Time, but I still understand why he'd be envious. And third, does this mean he wishes to break their reincarnation cycle? Seriously, this game goes so much deeper than people think it does. Can you imagine a Zelda game where Link, Zelda, and Ganon work together to actually break their curse set on them by Demise? That'd be fucking awesome. And also, Ganondorf doesn't wish to kill this Link like he did Ocarina of Time's Link. I don't think he ever wanted to. He just wanted to rule Hyrule. That's right. He caused so many people so much suffering, he stripped Link, Errol, and Tetra of a childhood in exchange for sticking to old legends. Zelda now has to waste away in Hyrule Castle's basement while Link earns the title of Hero of Winds, unlike the Hero of Time who obtained the title as birthright. All of this for an empty and barren kingdom that is only populated by Ganondorf and the King, all because he lost to the Hero of Time so long ago, all because he can't let go of the past. He's hell-bent on ruling Hyrule until... Ganondorf snaps. I guess he just couldn't take it anymore. So he finally decides, fuck it, they're all dead. The final fight is actually pretty cool. Look at this arena! I also love how fucking brutal the final blow is. And then... Link and Zelda are lifted up to the surface. But the king refuses to come with them. He stays to put the past to rest so the future generation can carry on. Which has been a theme in this game, if you haven't noticed by playing it, by the way. We arrive on the surface of the ocean. Here we see Tetra's pirate ship with the crew. Errol, Medley, and Makar. Then, the credits roll. Stop making me feel bittersweet. This is supposed to be a happy game. Real quickly before we get to the conclusion, I just want to mention that there is a Google Doc link in the description that is just my notes that I was taking while playing the game, in case you're curious of my thoughts on other stuff that was not mentioned in this review.
Wind Waker is just so special to me. Playing it on my GameCube, following Sugar Conroy's walkthrough, waiting for the HD version to come out because my GameCube disc got scratched to hell. I love the sense of adventure it gives you. It just makes me want to do stuff that I normally wouldn't do. It makes me want to go outside. Unfortunately, the heat outside still deters me. Even though it is November, it's still fucking hot out. It also gives out great themes, like to be courageous like our hero Link, who is just way in over his head but still pushes on to protect those he cares about. I also really enjoyed the Tingle Bottle. Just like I miss Miiverse so much. The game is also just extremely charming. Like, it just gives the feeling that everything is going to be okay. Also, this game introduced Beetle, 10 out of 10. Okay, well, it does have its flaws. 8 out of 10. I don't know, seems pretty fair. I also want to mention a video really quickly that I found while writing the script to this video, and it belongs to this YouTube channel called Liam Triforce. He's a pretty cool dude, and he made like a 2-hour review of Wind Waker, and it goes way more in depth about the game's themes, specifically the themes. That's why I want to shout it out. It's pretty good. Watch it. It's pretty good. Man, I really do love this game. I think I'm gonna do some questing.